I have watched men ask for the impossible. A man by the name of Carl Smith, he and his wife Hannah were on their way to the mission field in Africa. And while they were on their way, they got everything together. They were so excited to serve God in Africa. They sent all their belongings on ahead, the few things they had. And a week before they were set to set sail and go, Hannah came down incredibly sick. And then she was bedridden and was never able to walk or stand or do anything again. Their world came crushing down. And they had to postpone every trial, everything they wanted to do. Carl Smith said to his precious bride, "We're not going to get to go. But let's ask for something that's impossible. We have no money. Let's ask God to let us earn money so that we could send people in our place, so that we could send missionaries to take our place on the field." And Hannah said, "Carl, how would we do that?" He said, "We don't have to figure out how. We have to ask." You see, the problem is the devil says, "How are you going to do that?" Listen, if you could figure out how to do it, it wouldn't be impossible. It wouldn't be mountain moving. It always amazes me when we deal with deacon boards and others that have got businessmen on them, and they always want to ask this question, "Brother Gibbs, I don't see how we can do that." If you could see how to do it, you wouldn't need to move mountains. Mountain moving is when you can't ever see how to do it. Ooh. Well, he lived in a small house they rented. It had a garage building out back that could hold one car. It was a dirt floor. It didn't have electricity. He had to run a cord from the house out. And he said, "God, I need an answer. I need the impossible." And he started making little electrical pieces. God got all over it. He invented in that little garage a thing that let two military airplanes talk to each other, changing the frequency at 1,800 times a second. And the military grabbed it up, and suddenly Carl Smith was this electrical genius. And everybody came to him and said, "Carl, how did you do that?" He said, "I asked, in faith believing." By the time I got to meet Carl Smith, he had a nice sized building they were operating out of, and I'll never forget, the military would send choppers overhead to pick him up. They would have choppers flying in circles around him with gunships, and then they would lower one of the choppers and grab him and take off. And I worked there for a Christian radio station, and I asked him several times, because he'd come in at night, and I said, "Mr. Smith, when those choppers take you, where do you go?" He said, "Well, I'd love to tell you, but I'd have to kill you if we do." And I said, "I don't want to know that bad. I just don't want to know that bad." Several of his staff came to me and said, "Are you aware of how many missionaries he pays the full support for? Not how many missionaries does he contribute to. Do you know how many missionaries he pays the full support for?" I said, "No." One night when he came up and was talking to me, I said, "Mr. Smith, I've heard the number 400. Do you pay the full support for 400 missionaries?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, I thought probably not." He said, "David, it's just over 700. And I'm asking God this year to make it over 1,000. He said, "We give our local church the complete support for 700 people to take our place." you want to know how I did it? I asked, in faith believing. What would you do? What mountain would you like to move? By the way, before he went home to be with the Lord, they were paying the full support for over 2,000 missionaries. One man asked, whoa,